back home. I got a break. I had to open my door because it's so hot in my apartment. It's hot and the air is not good. Buy some chips. I like to try to finish this so I can stop and go to my bed. It's 6 p.m. I think we can continue if my computer have not crashed. Let's have to check my cell phone. Let's try finish. Oh, I have to read again tomorrow. I'm not feeling so well tonight.
2686-2181 BCE. Dot 44 in the remains.
Let's read from the top of the page.
This development can best be traced in the Near East, where spoke-wheeled and horse-drawn chariots are first attested in the earlier part of the 2nd millennium BC, and were illustrated on Assyrian cylinder seal dated to either the 18th or 17th century BCE. 32. Makode culture. Starokasunskaya kurgan in the Kuban region of Russia contains a wagon grave, or chariot burial, of the Makode culture, which also had horses. The two solid wooden wheels from this kurgan have been dated to the second half of the 4th millennium. Soon thereafter the number of such burials in this northern Caucasus region multiplied. 33. 34. Linguistic evidence also suggests that the inventors were Indo-European people from Eurasia. 8. Early wheeled vehicles in the Near East. Relief of early war wagons on the standard of Ur, c. 2500 BCE. According to Christoph Baumer, the earliest discoveries of wheels in Mesopotamia come from the first half of the 3rd millennium BCE, more than half a millennium later than first finds from the Kuban region. At the same time, in Mesopotamia, some intriguing early pictograms of a sled that rests on wooden rollers or wheelshave been found. They date from about the same time as the early wheel discoveries in Europe and may indicate knowledge of the wheel. 33. The earliest depiction of vehicles in the context of warfare is on the standard of Ur in southern Mesopotamia, c. 2500 BCE. These are more properly called wagons, which were double-axled and pulled by oxen or a hybrid of a donkey and a female onager. 35. Named Kunga in the city of Naga, which was famous for breeding them. 36. The hybrids were used by the oblate. 36. Early Sumerian, Akkadian and Uri armies. 37. Although sometimes carrying a spearman with the charioteer driver, such heavy wagons borne on solid wooden wheels and covered with skins may have been part of the baggage train, e.g. during royal funeral processions, rather than vehicles of battle in themselves. The Sumerians had a lighter, two-wheeled type of cart, pulled by 4 asses, and with solid wheels. Their spoked wheel did not appear in Mesopotamia until the mid-2nd millennium BCE. 38. Ancient Canaan and Israel. Chariots are frequently mentioned in the Hebrew Tanakh and the Greek Old Testament, respectively, particularly by the prophets, as instruments of war or as symbols of power or glory. First mentioned in the history of Joseph, Genesis 50:9, iron chariots are mentioned also in Joshua 17:16-18, and Judges 1:19-13, as weapons of the Canaanites and Israelites. 1 Samuel 13:5 mentions chariots of the Philistines, who are sometimes identified with the Sea Peoples or early Greeks. Examples from the Jewish Study Bible, 39, of the Tanakh, Jewish Bible, include Isaiah 2:7 Their land is full of silver and gold, there is no limit to their treasures, their land is full of horses, there is no limit to their chariots. Note 5. Jeremiah 4:13 Lo, he, i.e., the invader of V7. Ascends like clouds, his chariots are like a whirlwind, his horses are swifter than eagles. Woe to us, we are ruined. Note 6. Ezekiel 26 hours 10 minutes From the cloud raised by his horses dust shall cover you, from the clatter of horsemen and wheels and chariots. Your walls shall shake when he enters your gates as men enter a breached city. Note 7. Psalms 20:8 They call on chariots, they call on horses, but we call on the name of the Lord our God. Note 8. Song of Songs 1:9 I have likened you, my darling, to a mare in Pharaoh's chariots. Note 9. Examples from the King James Version of the Christian Bible include 2 Chronicles 1:14 And Solomon gathered chariots and horsemen, and he had 1,400 chariots, and 12,000 horsemen, which he placed in the chariot cities, and with the king at Jerusalem. Judges 1:19 And the Lord was with Judah, and he drave out the inhabitants of the mountain, but could not drive out the inhabitants of the valley, because they had chariots of iron. Note 10. Acts 8:37-38 Then Philip said, If you believe with all your heart, you may. And answered and said, I believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. So he commanded their chariot to stand still. And both Philip and the eunuch went down into the water, and he baptized him. Small domestic horses may have been present in the northern Negev before 3000 BC. 40. Jezreel city has been identified as the chariot base of King Ahab. 41. And a decorated bronze tablet thought to be the head of a linchpin of a Canaanite chariot was found at a site that may be Sisera's fortress Harosh Hagoyim. 42. 43. Egypt. Ramses II fighting from a chariot at the Battle of Kadesh with 2 archers, one with the reins tied around the waist to free both hands. Relief from Abu Simbel. Chariot use made its way into Egypt around 1650 BCE during the Hyksos invasion of Egypt and establishment of the 14th dynasty. 8. In 1659 BCE the Indo-European Hittites sacked Babylon, which demonstrated the superiority of chariots in antiquity. 8. The chariot and horse were used extensively in Egypt by the Hyksos invaders from the 16th century BC onwards, though discoveries announced in 2013 potentially place the earliest chariot use as early as Egypt's Old Kingdom, c. 2686-2181 BCE. 44. In the remains of Egyptian and Assyrian art, there are numerous representations of chariots, which display rich ornamentation. The chariots of the Egyptians and Assyrians, with whom the bow was the principal arm of attack, were richly mounted with quivers full of arrows. The Egyptians invented the yoke saddle for their chariot horses in c. 1500 BC. As a general rule, the Egyptians used chariots as mobile archery platforms. Chariots always had 2 men, with driver steering the chariot with his reins while the main archer aimed his bow and arrow at any targets within range. The best preserved examples of Egyptian chariots are the 4 specimens from the tomb of Tutankhamun. Chariots can be pulled by 2 or more horses. Introduction in Bronze Age Europe. Fresco depicting an italic chariot from the Lucanian tomb, 4th century BCE. Fresco depicting an italic chariot from the Lucanian tomb, 4th century BCE. A mosaic of the Castor tomb in Amphipolis depicting the abduction of Persephone by Pluto, 4th century BCE. a mosaic of the Castor tomb in Amphipolis depicting the abduction of Persephone by Pluto, 4th century BCE. The goddess Nike riding on a two-horse chariot, from an Apulian patera, Tre, Magna Graecia, 4th century BCE. The goddess Nike riding on a two-horse chariot, from an Apulian patera, Tre, Magna Graecia, 4th century BCE. Procession of chariots on a lake geometric amphora from Athens, c. 700 and 2700 BCE. Procession of chariots on a lake geometric amphora from Athens, c. 700 and 2700 BCE. As David W. Anthony writes in his book The Horse, the Wheel, and Language, in Eastern Europe, the earliest well-dated depiction of a wheeled vehicle, a wagon with two axles and four wheels, is on the Bronnesis pot, c. 3500 BCE. It is a clay pot excavated in a funnel beaker settlement in Świętokrzyski Voivodeship in Poland. 45. The oldest securely dated real wheel-axle combination in Eastern Europe is the Ljubljana Marshes wheel, c. 3150 BCE. 46. Greece. The charioteer of Delphi was dedicated to the god Apollo in 474 BCE by Thetirant of Gela in commemoration of a Pythian racing victory at Delphi. Chariot, armed warrior and his driver Greece 4th century BCE. Two female charioteers from Tiryns 1200 BCE. The later Greeks of the first millennium BCE had a, still not very effective, cavalry arm. Indeed, it has been argued that these early horseback riding soldiers may have given rise to the development of theater, heavily armed foot soldiers known as hoplites. 47. And the rocky terrain of the Greek mainland was unsuited for wheel-led vehicles. The chariot was heaviliest by the Mycenaean Greeks, most probably adopted from the Hittites, around 1600 BC. Linear tablets from Mycenaean palaces record large inventories of chariots, sometimes with specific details as to how many chariots were assembled or not, i.e. stored in modular form. On a gravestone from the royal shaft grave V in Mycenae dated LH2, about 1500 BC, there is one of the earliest depiction of the chariot in a chariot. This sculpture shows a single man driving a two-wheeled small box chariot. Later the vehicles were used in games and processions, notably for races at the Olympic and Panathenic Games and other public festivals in ancient Greece, in hippodromes and in contests called agons. They were also used in ceremonial functions. A swain, a paranymph, or friend of a bridegroom, went with him in a chariot to fetch the bride home. Herodotus, Histories, 5-9, reports that chariots were widely used in the Pontic Caspian steppe by the Sigynnae. Greek chariots were made to be drawn by two horses attached to a central pole. If two additional horses were added, they were attached on each side of the main pair by a single bar or trace fastened to the front prow of the chariot, as may be seen on two prize vases in the British Museum from the Panathenic Games at Athens, Greece, in which the driver is seated with feet resting on a board hanging down in front close to the legs of the horses. The biggin itself consists of a seat resting on the axle, with a rail at each side to protect the driver from the wheels. Greek chariots appear to have lacked any other attachment for the horses, which would have made turning difficult. The body or basket of the chariot rested directly on the axle, called beam, connecting the two wheels. There was no suspension, making this an uncomfortable form of transport. At the front and sides of the basket was a semicircular guard about 3 feet, 1 m, high, to give some protection from enemy attack. At the back the basket was open, making it easy to mount and dismount. There was no seat, and generally only a room for the driver and one passenger. The reins were mostly the same as those in use in the 19th century, and were made of leather and ornamented with studs of ivory or metal. The reins were passed through rings attached to the collar bands yoke, and were long enough to be tied round the waist.
Yes, I need a short break because I need to get more tips. I will record in my language days. Yes, god aften. Så min tipsskål jeg ligger og lidt prøver at gøre det færdigt her. Kameraet kører stadigvæk. Den vil være kvart over 6. Ekstra video. Jeg har været en tur til livet og tak til at komme over og sætte den over og gøre indlukket. Og vores skole og de børn. Så det er 3 kilo på det, så når du stopper det her. Yes, I got my chips. I got my chip snacks. So let's continue.
Of the chariot here to allow for defense. The wheels and basket of the chariot were usually of wood, strengthened in places with bronze or iron. Few wheels had from 4 to 8 spokes and tires of bronze or iron. Due to the widely spaced spokes, the rim of the chariot wheel was held in tension over comparatively large spans. Whilst this provided a small measure of shock absorption, it also necessitated the removal of the wheels when the chariot was not in use to prevent warping from continued weight-bearing. 48. Most other nations of this time had chariots of similar design to the Greeks, the chief differences being the mountings. According to Greek mythology, the chariot was invented by Erichthonius of Athens to conceal his feet, which were those of a dragon. 49. The most notable appearance of the chariot in Greek mythology occurs when Phaeton, the son of Helios, in an attempt to drive the chariot of the sun, managed to set the earth on fire. This story led to the archaic meaning of a Phaeton as one who drives a chariot or coach, especially at a reckless or dangerous speed. Plato, in his chariot allegory, depicted a chariot drawn by 2 horses, one well-behaved and the other troublesome, representing opposite impulses of human nature. The task of the charioteer, representing reason, was to stop the horses from going different ways and to guide them towards enlightenment. The Greek word for chariot, harma, is also used nowadays to denote a tank, properly called armor ma with acute khs, literally a combat chariot. Central and Northern Europe. A petroglyph in a double burial, c. 1000 BCE, the Nordic Bronze Age. The Trundholm Sun chariot is dated to c. 1400 BCE, c. Nordic Bronze Age. The horse drawing the solar disc runs on 4 wheels, and the sun itself on 2. All wheels have 4 spokes. The chariot comprises the solar disc, the axle, and the wheels, and it is unclear whether the sun is depicted as the chariot or as the passenger. Nevertheless, the presence of a model of a horse-drawn vehicle on 2-spoked wheels in Northern Europe at such an early time is astonishing. In addition to the Trundholm chariot, there are numerous petroglyphs from Nordic Bronze Age that depict chariots. One petroglyph, drawn on a stone slab in a double burial from c. 1000 BCE, depicts a figure with 2 four-spoked wheels. The use of the composite bow in chariot warfare is not attested in Northern Europe. Western Europe and British Isles. The Celts were famous for their chariots, and modern English words like car, carriage and carriore ultimately derived from the native Brythonic language, modern Welsh, serve